Okay, all right. So thank you again for joining us. This is our 7th event of the year, the final event of the spring 2022 season. The Strathmore Speaker Series is made possible through the support of the Gifford Foundation, the City of Syracuse, the Greater Strathmore Neighborhood Association, and as PBS would say, viewers like you. We like to pay all of our speakers an honorarium for donating their time. So if you would like to donate to support that cause, you can do so by visiting our website, strathmorespeakers.com. Every penny helps. Now to introduce our speakers for this evening. So our speakers are Abbey McHugh and Heather Cogan of Common Cause, New York. They're going to be discussing gerrymandering, voter suppression, and the recent work of Syracuse's Independent Redistricting Commission. Onondaga County's process, as many of you may know, was largely criticized as partisan and messy, resulting in district maps that are currently facing legal action. Ms. McHugh and Ms. Cogan will highlight the importance of Syracuse's independent model, its potential impact on Syracuse's voting districts, and ways the average citizen can engage in this unique once-in-a-decade process. A little bit about Common Cause. Common Cause is a nonpartisan grassroots organization dedicated to upholding the core values of American democracy, works to create open, honest, and accountable government that serves the public interest, promote equal rights, opportunity, and representation for all, and empower all people to make their voices heard in the political process. Common Cause New York is one of the most active state chapters in the country, representing tens of thousands of New Yorkers throughout the state. A brief Q&A will follow Abbey and Heather's talk. And now, without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Abbey from Common Cause.
Thank you so much. We're really excited to be here today. So I hope that all of you can see the screen that I'm sharing. As we said, I'm joined also by Heather, and Heather's going to be the one leading this presentation. So I'm going to kick it off to her now that I know my screen is being shared. Thank you so much, everyone.
Hey everyone, I'm Heather. Yeah, so let's dive in to the Syracuse Community Mapping and Local Redistricting Advocacy that we have going on. First, what is redistricting? Redistricting is the process used by governments to redraw electoral district lines to reflect changes in population. Only happens once every decade after the census, which impacts all elections for the next 10 years. Speaking up about your community is important to ensure that district lines are drawn to empower your political voice. Local redistricting advocacy matters because it gives communities a voice and access to the political process. You may be able to create maps that better represent all of our communities, and you allow for community oversight in the process as well. So Syracuse's City Redistricting Commission was formed in 2019 by activists who fought to pass the citizen-led redistricting commission model, which is the first of its kind in New York, actually. So it's a little bit different than the counties and the state. The new Syracuse redistricting process puts the power in the hands of a group of 15 citizens who are selected partly at random from over 100 applicants. And throughout this process, we hope that the commission will be able to set an example for the rest of the state, like I said, by showing that inclusive, thoughtful, and transparent redistricting is possible, as it was different on a state level. So this is the list of the Syracuse Redistricting Commission members. I'm not going to read them all by name. You can actually go on the commission's website and see a short bio about each one of them if you wish. And so what we must do as commission members, or what the commission members rather, should consider when drawing the district maps are the relationship between one person and one vote, districts, preservation of communities of interest, districts that are compact, and districts that are contiguous. We have a couple more hearings coming up We actually just ended one today, was at 5:30, and then we have the last that is going to be next Tuesday, or a week from Tuesday rather, on June 14th at 5:30. It's going to be at the Southwest Community Center. And there will be more in July. We just don't have the specific dates for those right now. But it's also, they're going to take the maps that we're working on right now. So, and all of the input from the hearings to draw up possible subtle differences in the maps for those hearings as well. So how we can get involved as a community is to organize, draw our own maps, testify at hearings, and to lobby our representatives. So because this is for the city of Syracuse, that would be our common councilors. So testifying basically is, and I think we can give you guys a link to a template that we have that is really nice. And you can basically stand up and give your testimony about how you feel about your community, where you think your lines have gone. This hearing that I just left to be here with you guys tonight actually went pretty well. The turnout was pretty good, and so people were able to come up and do pretty effective testimony as far as the components of testifying, which are going to be the building blocks that establish credentials, identify the critical points, tell a story, and provides evidence and list consequences. And it's nice to have a specific ask. So what that entails is, you know, basically just asking a specific solution to the maps. So right now we have these proposed maps, and people are just basically getting up, they're introducing themselves. If they're with an organization, they'll say that. If they're just a community member, they'll say that as well. Or like I would get up and say, I'm with, you know, Common Cause. And then you got to basically just be pretty clear about your goals for your testimony, and, you know, letting the community and the commission know why you're there. So as a community member, you would just say, you know, hi, I'm so-and-so. And when you prepare your testimony, like I said, we do have templates. If anyone is interested in them, let us know. You're going to, so there's some tips you can consider. I don't know, the screen's not really changing, but you can prepare your testimony as far as including some evidence to support what you're saying, as far as where you want your lines drawn and what you feel should be part of a district based on where you feel your community should lie and fall within it. And you can get some quantitative and qualitative analysis. That would be great, as these maps are based off of census blocks, census tracts, and overall population. So when you're making your testimony, it should be, though, as personal and community centered as possible. You want to share what negative outcomes could happen if maps change or remain the same. Some of the things that we're hearing, especially on the north side, is around the Holly Green area, which was divided partially due to population. So that's a lot of what we were hearing tonight, specifically being that we were at the Northeast Community Center. And when you go up there, just be prepared for counter arguments. Some people may have questions based off of your testimony. So know if there are opposing viewpoints and be able to defend your position. If you don't know the answer to a question, it's okay to say that you don't know, but you will get back to them with the answers. So community mapping basically is when a group of people identify. So basically who you are, what makes you, who we are, and what makes us special, where we live, and how we share our interests. Some of those might be, you know, natural dividers such as streets, parks, stores where we shop. As far as interests are concerned, churches, community centers as well, where our schools are. And then community mapping. The courts will recognize the community shaped representation and interests, and they will focus on areas that share what we consider the 3 C's, which is culture, concerns, and counts. The most powerful stories are ones where community leaders connect, identify with impact. Building blocks of district maps. Districting is when you follow these specific rules, which are the population has to be relatively equal, it has to be compact, it has to be contiguous, voting rights act requirements must be met. I believe that for this commission, the largest district and the smallest district can't have a difference of more than 1,500 people. So they had to take all of that into account based off of the census data that was acquired in the 2020 census. And they use that as a guide point to draw the districts of as far as equal population. So things to think about are, as you're sharing your stories, are to cover those 3 C's. Culture. How would you describe the people who are part of your community? What do we all have in common? What is our history? What are languages? What do we celebrate and what do we value? Concerns might be what issues need attention from the government, what community projects need resources. Are there examples of elected officials ignoring our concerns? Count, again, is just the data based on the census population that was accumulated in 2020. So for the north side, a big part of the culture and the history is its diversity. There are, you know, multiple religions, multiple languages, multiple places of worship, multiple places to shop, as well as the community centers that help facilitate a lot of the diversity and the assimilation for a lot of the populations that are more of the refugee and immigrant population, and how that relates to someone, you know, who may be more of a natural citizen. Has been a lot of the things coming up in that area. So getting a council person that is going to represent all of those factions is very, very important going forward once these maps are finalized. So community should be the building blocks of the redistricting. Community mapping is a chance for people to tell their own stories. Community maps will provide data for those creating statewide district maps for New York. Communities of interest can be used to evaluate official map proposals, and communities of interest can be presented to media and courts. So all of these maps can be used through the that if you want to bring up the district R again, that's fine. Through district R, we can go to districtr.org, and it's a free public mapping software basically that allows anyone to draw their own maps. It was developed by a team of mathematicians, data scientists, software developers, geographers, and volunteers committed to a fair and open redistricting process. So where this is relatively new to Syracuse, it has been done and successful in other communities. It was built in partnership with civil rights and community groups to customize the tool. And you can also, what I really like is see your census data as well. As you draw your maps, it'll give you the numbers and things like that. So we can do a map for you guys. I think we're going to do the north side.
And Heather, I'm not sure if you want to ask and see if there's any volunteers that would be willing to have their communities mapped out and just describe a little bit about their communities in order to build their community map. But if we don't have any volunteers, we can also just take a look at the north side as a whole.
To put that, sorry.
Well, I was going to say most of our participants are from the Strathmore neighborhood, and that's where the Strathmore Speakers is based. So if that's possible, maybe we do that one.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to pull it up on my screen right now, and then we're going to have Heather just walk us through it. If people want to chime in too, that's going to make this the most effective, just because all of you know your community best. And in order to make the community maps as effective as possible, we're going to need many different data points. So feel free to either unmute or put in the chat different data points that we should consider. One moment while I start sharing my screen.
I would also like to point out that in the proposed maps, the Strathmore area is one of the hot button areas of the city, as it will be changing. All
right, so we have the whole entire map pulled up now. So let's start with some data points.
So
should we do the Onondaga Free Library first?
Yeah, let's do that.
And so as you can see, they have a search bar up here. And so we could put in any point. And as I do that, I'm going to kick it over to Heather now to just give me some other points as people are putting stuff in the chat.
So there's the library, and then I believe Strathmore has a couple of pretty significant parks. I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Schiller Park is over there.
Onondaga Park. I mean, actually, sad to say that the Onondaga Free Library is not in Strathmore. Sorry, everyone who's on the. Sorry, thank you for being our patrons, but we're sorry that we're not in the Strathmore neighborhood.
Yeah,
we're Strathmore adjacent.
Yeah, Schiller Park is on the north side.
Right, but I think that there's a couple more parks as well.
Yeah, there's Maine. There's Lower Onondaga. Onondaga, yeah.
So is that one park? I've never understood that. Is that one park or two parks? Because that street kind of divides it, but it's together. I don't know. Yeah.
And then they just Maine Onondaga Park is also part of Strathmore.
And let me look. Let me see if I can.
Elmwood Park and Woodlawn Reservoir.
Right. I feel like, though, like I said, this is one of the areas that is proposed to change a little bit. So I do want to look at, for a little bit of context, the proposed maps. So, because what they have done is they, yeah, so it runs along West Onondaga, and the way they're doing it is they were not very good at putting cross streets on here, unfortunately. So they do have West Onondaga as one of the natural borders. And then it looks like a block over from Rich Street is kind of where they're cutting it. And then it's hard to, I apologize, I have black and white versions of it, so it's some of the shading too is a little bit hard for me to see as well. But yeah, like some of these comments in the chat are Okay, so Rich Street is off of Geddes. So that's a little bit further, I think, into the west side. And then one of the points as well is the Most Holy Rosary Church, as well as Bellevue Heights Methodist Church. Again, Upper Onondaga, Elmwood, the Reservoir at Woodlawn.
I think we're starting to get some good points, and as you can zoom out, you can see the red circles of where we've already touched on. And so it looks like that a community of interest is starting to form, as you can see, as we start to get more points. And I know that someone was able to already comment a place of worship. And so if you have more in your community, and also, as Heather said earlier in the conversation, places like grocery stores, schools should be considered. So if your kids or grandkids go to school somewhere in the community, let us know so that we can make sure to add that point too, just because we want to make sure that we get the clearest picture possible. The more data points that we have, the better picture we'll be able to draw of your community.
Yeah, so Corcoran is going to be like where the south side and it meets, as well as Roberts is the middle school, I believe. Or actually it's K through 8, I think, right? I'm not sure if they're splitting Upper and Lower Onondaga Park. It's hard to tell, like I said, on the map. If you guys wanted to play around with this, you can go on the commission's website, and we also have and the maps ourselves as well. So we can get those to you. And for me, what's hard is I know Main Streets pretty well. I have lived on the west side, Tip Hill area, and on the east side though primarily. So the Strathmore area specifically, I really have only been there to do census data and some canvassing for that. And you kind of jump around a little bit when you're doing the enumeration phase, because it's based off people who didn't fill out their censuses. It was also 2 years ago, so there's that as a factor. And I feel like there really aren't very many grocery stores. I would say that the closest would be like the Price Chopper and the Wegmans down on Onondaga, and Velasco right there. Would probably be the closest as far as bigger shopping centers. And there's somewhat of a natural border is where the city ends, and the West Hill School District does start as well. So, and then you can, I would say even that price right that was put in there is probably part of it, but I don't know if you guys would necessarily go shopping there. I would think you'd probably go more toward the Price Chopper or the Wegmans, if I'm saying that correctly. Does that sound right to everyone?
Sounds right to me.
Okay.
I go there.
Yeah.
So
That's what I was thinking.
as all the patrons, everyone, now you know where I shop, the Wegmans in Western West.
Yes. Well, and it's hard too, because the only other thing that was relatively close to there was Tops, and they closed down, and there are quite a few natural borders too, as far as to get over to that Tops. So
Perfect. So I know that we are continuing to get some data points, but I just wanted to also show what Heather was talking about before, where you could see some of the census data from the most recent census also in this, in order to inform your community. So you can show population. And so when you click that, you could see the more denser parts of where you're looking at, and the least dense. So the more black it is, the more people live in that particular area, and the more white it is, the least dense it is. And as Heather said in her presentation, population has to be considered in all maps drawn by the Syracuse Redistricting Commission as well as statewide. So having a sense of what the population is in your different area can help you draw your community map also. And you could show it by total population, but what the commissioners worry about is by voting age population. So people that are registered to vote, that are old enough to register to vote. So it's slightly different, as you can see, but it's still about the same gradient. And then you could go even further and look at different coalitions. And so if you click the boxes, this is all based on census data, you can see the different ethnicities based in the area that you're trying to map out, just to give a better idea of your community also, just because, as Heather said, once again, race is also considered when redistricting, keeping together cultures of interest in order to maximize political power and give people a voice in our government. So I just wanted to make sure that you saw this data layers before we get into mapping your community. So I know that we have some good points now. It looks like we have a pretty clear area of view of your area now. So I'm going to show you how to draw your own area of interest now that you have the different points. And so if you go to this little tool where it says, and then do where it says paint, you could go by these little blocks and actually, oh, sorry. Here we go. You could go block by block and actually paint your county. So I'm going to mute and show you how to do that in a second.
So do you have, so if you were making this map and you're putting in the point of interest, how does the point of interest, like if you had more parks or a larger shopping center, how do those landmarks figure into what the commissioners would consider? Or
yes, so you could see it a little bit here. If the commissioners are unfamiliar with your area, they might think that places down here or all the way up here might be important to where you live and where you go out every single day in order to make sure that everything's taken together. But when you do the different points, you're able to sketch a more closer and more accurate view of your community, just to make sure that it stays together in this redistricting process, because they have to consider every single community in the entire city of Syracuse. And so if people from every community end up doing this sort of process and end up giving it to the Redistricting Commission, they're going to have plot points for the entire city of what people believe is their specific community of interest, and they will be able to make those accurate maps possible. And so, yeah, every single plot point is to help you understand on the map what it looks like, just because that's what they're going to be considering ultimately.
Well, and you also got to remember, like, the commission is 15 people that were chosen, and they each live in the city of Syracuse. So, but they all live in different districts. So you have 15 people living throughout the city that although they may live in each district, where they live within that district and how they perceive it and how it is represented in the maps that they see, they have drawn, the proposed maps, may be very different from someone who lives a couple streets away. Syracuse is extremely segregated in a lot of areas. So some of the things that we've been hearing at each one of these hearings is it's starting to become very repetitive from different people. So like I said, like on the north side specifically, the Holly Green area was broken up. Strathmore was taken out of the other part, which was used to be considered the north side, and it was moved more toward the west side. Downtown was completely dissolved as a district, and the proposed maps have it broken up into different parts of the city. And a lot of it's got to do with the way the laws are written as far as representation is concerned. So unfortunately, our smallest part of the city, our smallest district, is the most concentrated. So a lot of focus had to be on that area. One of our biggest districts, however, is the least dense as far as population is concerned. So that was taken into consideration as well. And then having to factor in where can we take from a population to add to this population so that it is within the parameters of the law. And like I said, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's 1,500 from the largest district to the smallest district. So the differentiation within all 5 districts can only be 1,500 people. So if you have an apartment complex of substantial size, which the city has a good number of, it can really skew a population, and you can't break up apartment complex. It wouldn't be right. So it makes it very hard in some of these areas where we have really hard lines, such as, the 81, 690, Velasco Road for you guys would be one of, the, like, a natural border, Onondaga, another natural border. And like somebody pointed out, I didn't even realize this, that when you cross the street from Wegmans to Price Chopper, and it would just be like that little corner, because as you go past it toward Grand Ave to take a right, that's the near west side. So they can kind of come up at you pretty fast, as far as where not just the common council lines are going to shift and change, but where the town lines are going to change and the county lines are going to change. So it's always kind of like that give and take of a process, and that they've been working on for the last 9 months doing this.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. And then before we open it up for questions, because I know we've covered so much material by now, I just wanted to point out our rough but finished community map that we just talked about. So based on the points that we just discussed and that you were able to provide in the chat, we were able to come up with this map. And so you can see the little blocks that are painted in are based on the 2020 census blocks. And so if you were able to give this approximation to the Redistricting Commission and just say, hey, I thought a bit about my community of interest, here's the map that I drew for you, please make sure that this community stays together in your final map. It is so helpful for the commissioners just to have that visual representation and to know why you want your community to stay together, and why you put the different boundaries on your community like this. And so just being able to put this physically in front of them will be so helpful, and will help your testimony if you're able to participate in this process. And we highly encourage you to do so, just because, as we said, this is such a new process in New York. And if we're able to prove that community-led redistricting is possible, this model might be able to be adopted statewide and have different implications and really change the future of New York politics that Common Cause believes for the better. So we're really excited for this process in Syracuse, and hopefully today we were able to answer a few of your questions that you might have had. And once again, I'm going to go back to the slide with the upcoming meeting, the last meeting before July. And between June 27th and June 30th, the commission will be making a final map that they'll propose for people to view in July. And so if you're able to make this upcoming meeting and present your community of interest and talk a little bit about your community, it will affect the final map that's being proposed and drawn at the end of this month. And so we highly, highly encourage you to get involved in this process if you haven't already. And before we kick it off to Q&A, Heather, any other things that you want to touch on?
I don't think so. I think we're good. Thank you.
I think so too. Thank you all for listening.
Was a lot of information.
All right, so if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and type them in the chat. I guess one question is, why is this independent commission so unique, and what was the impetus for adopting it as opposed to what came before?
And so Heather, if you want to talk about a bit about what came before in your experience in Syracuse before redistricting, I could talk a little bit about the future and why this was adopted.
So, and this goes to Patricia's question as well about how the impact of gerrymandering on democracy. So the last time our maps were actually drawn was 20 years ago. So for 20 years, we've been functioning off of an accurate census data, basically, because there was a 2010 census that the maps were not redrawn, and population has shifted. It has grown in some areas, and it has dispersed in other areas. Downtown has been completely redone. There's been a lot in the last 20 years of the land bank tearing down homes, and as well as restoring homes throughout the city. So in 2019, I don't know if you guys remember, like I said, on the ballot, this was voted for as far as to help alleviate some of the gerrymandering lines as far as the districts were concerned. So what some people wanted to see was something that was more representative of our communities, that was, again, based on the census data and really did actually follow the law, that was not outdated, that was current. So, and the way gerrymandering affects our democracy is that, for instance, the way the maps are now, we don't have a majority minority district. So in the proposed maps, there is one, which the way voting works statistically is people of color are less likely to vote. People in a lower socioeconomic status are less likely to vote for a multitude of reasons. So if we can have a district that's going to be more representative to them, and we've taken a lot of steps through Common Cause, Let New York Vote, as far as alleviating some of the stressors that make it harder for people in a lower socioeconomic status to get out to vote, to make the voting process a little less confusing. As far as we've consolidated the primaries, which was blown out of the water this year. We do have two again, unfortunately. And, making like early voting is very, very, very important as far as I'm concerned. And the automatic voter registration as well, because we need our youth to be registered as easily and seamlessly as possible, so that they can have the opportunity to have a voice. Because this is one of the examples that I use. I work in one of the local high schools. None of my kids in my school have ever been represented by the Common Council based on these maps alone. Because they're all, 18 and under, obviously. So if the maps were not redrawn for 20 years, how representative of them is this? And these are the kids that in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years are going to be able to be legal age to vote. So I don't know if that answers kind of both of those questions a little bit. And Abby can elaborate, like she said.
Yeah, totally, Heather. You did a great job of explaining a lot, but I just wanted to add that it is such a unique process that you guys are trying out here in Syracuse, just because, as we just saw on the statewide level, that the legislature, the courts were the ones that ended up drawing the lines. So politicians with vested interest in the court's case. There was a map maker that did not know New York at all. He was from Pennsylvania that was sent in to draw the statewide maps in the most recent court hearing. But what Syracuse is doing is giving 15 of your friends and neighbors the power to draw districts that will affect you all for the next decade. These people live in your community, care about your community, and want what's best for their friends and neighbors. So they're going to do a good job. And if they're able to draw maps that most accurately reflect your communities based on your feedback, it's going to be all the better just to ensure that people have a voice for the next 10 years and have people on the Syracuse Common Council that are representative of their ideas and beliefs. So by participating in this process and giving it into the hands of your friends and neighbors on the council, we hope that it's going to show that thoughtful redistricting is possible and can be put out of the hands of politicians and into the people that are directly impacted, the voters and the people that live there. So we're really excited to work with you all.
Okay, the next question is from James Morgan. He asks, I think, as you stated, there'll be 5 districts. What would the average population then be in those 5 districts, roughly?
I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, and I can't find it on the commission's page right now. But if I'm remembering correctly, based on the chart, and you can't quote me on this, but I believe it's somewhere between like around 20,000 people, give or take. A little bit more, a little bit less, which the way the maps are currently drawn, some of them, again, we have that 1,500 as far as population and the difference from the most populated district to the least populated district. Right now, the way they're drawn, some of them have 9,000 people of a difference. So that percentage is very skewed. And I don't know if this helps as a little bit of an example that I've been, talking to people. But if you're one person and you have 2 children and you have to divide your time between 2 kids that are going in 2 different directions, it's a lot more manageable than if you have 4 children that are going in 4 different directions and you're trying to manage what they're doing. Or even like at work, if you're in charge of, 2 people under you, it's a lot easier to be a part of that process. So if you have a common council district with 9,000 more people, that's really, really hard to represent, especially in an area that is very densely populated with, all of those C's factors, with different cultures, different, religious backgrounds, different age groups, different schools that they're going to. So it gets pretty complicated, I think, for some of these counselors as it is right now. And yes, there are only 5, but in the next 10 years, there is talk, and this does keep coming up at the hearings as well. So I'll just put this out there. The 5 districts is not necessarily set in stone. So, and just because these maps are 20 years old, we're really seeing the effects of really 70 years worth of change in our city. So one of the other things that keeps coming up, and it's really, one of those hot button topics, is 81. So what 81 did to the city 70 years ago is going to be reversed when 81 is taken down. So it's really hard to project how the population is going to shift once that happens. So what we have to do is we have to basically look at the trends that we have right now, the data that we have right now, and just work within those parameters and then work over the next 10 years, because the census never stops. You might only fill it out every 10 years, but the work is ongoing. So is the work, and that goes over into the work of the counselors and the districts. So this is an ongoing process. This is not going to end with this. It's not going to take effect this year. So this will be voted on and be a part of the 2023 election cycle. So that's when this will take into effect. So your district counselors are going to stay the same until next year in that election cycle. So if that makes sense.
Is that this, so, and this is only impacting the city's common council, right? It's not,
Correct.
doesn't affect
Yes.
any other districting. Okay.
Right. Yes. Sorry, I did it again. I answered kind of two questions.
Oh, no, that's quite all right.
But it is
and-
all very interconnected. So it's a part of the confusion, but it also, once you kind of start getting into it, really can help explain it as well. So I do apologize. I know I did it again.
Oh, that's quite all right. The next question is from Kim Margosian. She says, having studied the State Redistricting Commission, do you have hope that this process will result in less gerrymandering, as the state process, I guess it seems, did not?
So by centering communities in redistricting instead of what the vested interests that are electorally impacted by redistricting, we bet we'll see less gerrymandering and more focusing on the communities of interest. So it's once again, it's going to depend on all the data that the commission gets. So the more data, the more communities that come out in full force to speak their truth and tell them exactly where they want the lines to be, it's going to be hard for the commission of their peers not to listen to them, just because the power in this process is with the people. So you have a direct ear to the commission, which is very rare. And for those that were following the New York state process, like Kim, you'll see that it was all behind closed doors. You had to formally testify in person, or you had to submit written testimony, and there was no guarantee that it would be considered in the final map. It would be read, but there's no guarantee that would be considered in the final map. But for this process, you have a direct ear to the commissioners. It's a transparent process. They're having multiple hearings and multiple drafts of the map, so you'll be able to see how the feedback changes with each map. So we hope that this process will allow a path forward for more transparency in the future for redistricting.
Right. So like to piggyback on that, and then I do kind of want to circle back to, I think we missed a question, but yeah, so if this works in the city of Syracuse, it will give us a platform on the county and the state level to really be like, hey, this worked. And it's worked, and we got this from somewhere else that it worked. So let's try it. But I think Ruth, she said that I never understand why I'm not given offer to vote for the mayor of Syracuse. I feel like that question, you should probably talk to Dustin and Michelle at the Board of Elections, because they do the ballots. So I would definitely get in contact with them. And see if they can answer that question for you based on your location.
Yeah, and then the last question is from Patty Black, and she asks, what has been the reaction from common council members to this process?
So I know Heather has been at a ton of the meetings in the hearings and has heard directly from some common counselors. So if you want to talk a bit about their reaction.
So I think that the counselors are in a really precarious position. They've been working on this for 9 months. And I feel like I've come in kind of at the 11th hour, being brought on by Common Cause to do some community workshops. And tonight, especially, what was really frustrating for me is people were getting up there asking questions that if they had come to some of the workshops that I've been giving or done something on this type of a platform, that they would know the answers to those questions. So I can't really speak for, how they're feeling as far as, they've all been pretty good about being pretty neutral. But I know, like, it hurts me to know that indirectly I have been part of this process since 2019. And so I think we can get a little bit defensive at times. It can get a little heated at times, not just on the Common Council side. Tonight, there was a lot of the Common Council members at the meeting, far more than there were at other meetings. Again, this is my so this is my observation, is that some of the common councilors really need to educate themselves a little bit better on this process, just because of the fact that they're the ones who put it up for a vote in 2019. They're the ones who gave up this power to draw these maps. And then some of them are very engaged in the process and some of them know the process. Again, these are just my observations of what I've heard and what I've seen. So, like I said, the commission's been doing this for 9 months. And I think that we have a real opportunity if we can just hear each other out from both sides. And I do think that for the most part, the Common Council has been doing that. I did like tonight was really, really good. There was a lot of common councilors. There's 2 or 3 common councilors there. There were other community members that are really prevalent from the community there that got up and spoke. The live stream is on Fair Maps CNY, if you guys want to go on there and follow that page. The commission is really good at taking the live feed video and posting it on theirs as well. So you guys can really hear and see. There's also a county legislature person 2 people, I believe, from the county legislature that were there. And that kind of went both ways. One was like, oh, this is great. If we can make this work in Syracuse, maybe we can make it work on a county level. And the other person was a little bit more hesitant, like, I don't know how this is going to work anywhere ever. So really needed to be kind of shown, which at this point, we're still in the, very early stages of this. We don't know how this is going to work out, and like I said, this is really 70 years of our community and our city manifesting into this process. And with the maps not being redrawn for 20 years, I think we have a really significant opportunity here to move forward. I feel like the city of Syracuse, the county of Onondaga, and the state in a lot of regards, the country, I mean, you can make an argument for anywhere, is kind of been stagnant with some things for a very, very long time. And I think it's a really good opportunity to change that.
Great. All right. Well, I think that is a good note to end it on. So thank you very much, Heather, and thank you very much, Abby, for joining us and giving us a little bit more insight into how the Redistricting Commission works and what we can do to get involved. So thank you both.
Thank you all so much for listening. We really appreciate it.
All right. And thank you as well to everyone who spent the last hour with us. This, as I said again, is the final event of the 2022 Spring Strathmore Speaker Series. We are taking the summer off. The library is not. We are open. We've got a lot of programs and we hope to see you all there. But the Strathmore speakers are taking a little summer hiatus and will return in September. Right now, we're still finalizing the lineup. So please check either the Strathmore Speakers website at strathmorespeakers.com or visit the library's website at oflibrary.org for updates. And we, on behalf of the Strathmore Speakers Series and the Onondaga Free Library, I wish you all a pleasant summer, and hopefully we'll see you back here in September for the fall season. So thank you, everybody, and good night. And thank you again to Abby and Heather. Good night, everybody.
Bye.